Oh, that's nice.
All right, welcome everybody to the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. We'll get started in about 2 minutes. I think we've got everything working here. We've got a pretty packed agenda, so we'll get started right away. Thanks. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to the Sunnyvale Democratic Club. We'll start with my name is Mike Cerrone. I'm the president, and a couple announcements at the beginning. I think a number of you were at a great event for a fundraiser for David Cohen this morning that Councilmember Linda Sell organized, and so that was a great event. And Gail, I believe you're hosting a meet and greet for David Cohen here at El Dorado Clubhouse on April 30th. 6:30. All right, so you can look forward to that. Should be another great event. What's that? Ice cream and pie. So should be a great event. And also on April 26th, Councilmember Murli Srinivasan will be having a kickoff at Ortega Park at 3 p.m. That's April 26th. So you can look for that. And there'll be, I'm sure, many other events coming up because we are in a political season here. We will, just for general information, we'll have our endorsement meeting for Sunnyvale City Council in June, as we've done before. So that's something to look forward to. On our next meeting, May 16th, as always, we will be having executive board elections. And so we have a nominating committee working on that, chaired by Peggy Shen Brewster. Do you want to say a few words, Peggy, if you're available?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Yes, we're working on the slate for the executive board. We do have one at-large position available, and I sent out an email inviting everybody that is a member in good standing to please contact me. We also have Sandy Spires and Susan Salop working on the committee with me, so you're also welcome to contact them. And we will be presenting the slate to the executive board by May the 6th, and the vote will be at the May meeting. Yeah, please give me a call. I will put my contact information in the chat, and there's also an email with it. Thank you very much. Let me just add that it's really been a was really a great joy and value for me as I was kind of getting more into political life and into the Sunnyvale community to serve on this board. And I really, really enjoyed my time, and I wish I could have continued, but I was joining the school district board, and so I was unable to. But this is definitely a board that I would love to serve on again, maybe when I'm off the school board, out of office. So anyway, I encourage you, if you would like to be more involved, kind of contribute to the meetings, talk about how to activate the club and to save our democracy, please give me a call or text message or email. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Peggy. And thanks for taking this on. Let's see. So we have two topics today. We'll be talking about homelessness and the Sunnyvale's strategic plan to address homelessness. And then the second part is we'll be discussing flock cameras, surveillance cameras, license plate cameras, in the second part. And I just want to highlight, and we'll hear this again, but that the next council meeting next Tuesday, we will hear about the city's safe parking programs at that meeting, which is part of the homelessness spectrum here, and also City Council will be looking at the flock camera contracts. So just to keep that in mind. I can quickly highlight the elected officials who are here. I mentioned here in the room is Councilmember Linda Sell, and Pat Carpio from Fremont Union High School District. And we have Carol Weiss on HHS. And online, we have Vice Mayor Richard Mellinger, Mayor Larry Klein, and just going down the line here, Scott Duncan, who also on HHS, and Doug Kuntz, who's on sustainability, and all right. Well, without any further ado, let me introduce Chuck Fraleigh, Vice Chair of Livable Sunnyvale, and he can talk about Livable Sunnyvale is doing some great work right now, looking at the city's first strategic plan for addressing homelessness that is in process now. So he's going to go through a presentation here and then enlighten us all. Thanks, Chuck.
Hello? Okay, that's working better. Excuse me. All right, well, thank you, Mike. Yeah, so as Mike mentioned, I'm part of Livable Sunnyvale, and we have been doing a lot of advocacy for the unhoused. Oop, hello. Excuse me a second. I think.
Do you have audio enabled?
Oops, sorry about that. I had gotten unmuted on Zoom. Let me start this over again. All right, yeah, so we've been doing a lot of work advocating for the unhoused. So this presentation is just some of the background and some of the things I've learned as part of this work we've been doing. All right, so it's probably not a surprise to anyone, but the unhoused population in California has been growing quite substantially over the past number of years. So this chart, this is data from something called the PIT count, the point in time count, which is a project that's done every year. So there are organizations across the country on a particular day every year. They go out and they count the number of unhoused in their communities. And so this is done kind of at the city level, and it's rolled up to the counties and the states and eventually to the federal Housing and Urban Development Department. And they publish the results kind of nationwide for the number of unhoused. So what this graph is the blue line is the number of unhoused in the PIT count from 2007 up to 2024. So the blue line is California, and that's the scale on the left. And then the orange line is Santa Clara County, which is the scale on the right, about a tenth of what California is. And there's a little blip in COVID. There was 1 year that the count just didn't work because of COVID and all the lockdowns that were going on. But the big takeaway is that kind of over the past 10 years, since about 2015, the unhoused population has increased by about 60%, both in California and in Santa Clara over that time period. So quite a substantial increase. And so one of the questions kind of we first kind of started thinking about is just like, why are there so many unhoused? Why is this population growing like this? And if you kind of look at different media sources, if you talk to people, lots of people throw around a lot of ideas on why this population is growing so substantially. There are a lot of people with mental health issues or substance abuse issues, or it's bad in California because the weather is nice here and that makes people want to, it kind of attracts the unhoused, or there's a lot of poverty, generosity of public assistance. There's a lot of woke policies in San Francisco and California, and that's what's driving this. And so a lot of people have really kind of tried to dig into this and understand the problem. And the way they usually do this is they try to compare different areas. So they look at how does California compare with other regions? How do different cities compare? And look at places that have high numbers of unhoused and low numbers of unhoused, and what are the characteristics? The idea would be that, like, if the rate of homelessness is caused by mental health issues, the places in the country that have a lot of unhoused should also have a correspondingly high rate of people with mental health issues. And what they've found pretty much consistently through all these studies is that kind of none of the kind of common things that get thrown out there are really that important. And this is a quote kind of from that first paper listed there. The median rent level has the dominant effect on mental homelessness rates in different areas. So it's primarily the cost of housing is what is driving the rates of homelessness that we're seeing. And actually, the second reference there's a book that's actually pretty good on this, Homelessness is a Housing Problem, that really digs into this and looks into a lot of the nuance behind this. But it's really kind of the cost of housing. Places that have high rents and high cost of housing have high rates of homelessness. And you can think about that kind of with thinking about kind of that chart that I showed at first. Kind of over the past 10 years, homelessness has gone up by 60%. Well, have the number of people experiencing mental health issues in California gone up by 60% over the past 10 years? Probably not. Have the number of people that have substance abuse issues gone up by 60%? Probably not. Has the weather gotten 60% better over the last 10 years? Not really. It's gone up and down a lot. But have rents gone up over 60% over the past 10 years? And so really kind of looking at these is really the cost of rent, which is driving a lot of these increases in the unhoused. So getting into some details about Sunnyvale specifically. So this, in 2025, they do the PIT count every year. 2025, last year, there were 421 individuals that went out and got counted on the day that they did this that were unhoused in Sunnyvale. But that's not quite the complete picture. Kind of it evolves over time. Over the course of the year, people become unhoused, people find housing, people move and transition. Sunnyvale Community Services, which is kind of a local nonprofit that helps with a lot of this. Last year, they helped over 700 unhoused individuals just in 1 year in Sunnyvale. And another kind of somewhat disturbing statistic, these are students in K through 12 in Santa Clara County. So the graph is for Santa Clara County. And the graph is showing the number of unhoused students in the K through 12 public school systems in Santa Clara. And it's up to almost 9,000 students as of last year. In Sunnyvale alone, just the Sunnyvale School District, which is just a K through 8 district that covers a lot of Sunnyvale, there are 83 students that they've identified that are unhoused and trying to make it through school. So who are these people that are unhoused? A lot of times when someone says, oh, there's someone homeless or someone unhoused, a lot of people get kind of a mental picture in their mind of what that looks like. But it's really a very wide range, very diverse group. These are just kind of some random statistics that I came across. 8%, so looking at the pig count from 2024, 8% of the people that they counted were children. Over 15,000 people kind of across across the state of California were children. And a similar number, about 7% were seniors, and the senior population is one of the ones that's actually growing fairly quickly. 14% were families, so there are a lot of families living on the streets in their cars and shelters. As a lot of people expect, the majority is men, but it's not a huge majority. It's about 63%. 34% are women. 3% are transgender and non-binary, and there's a couple of other categories they have in their survey. And it predominantly affects minority groups. So only about 36% of the people in this big count were white. 37% were Latino, Latinx. 22% were Black, and 3% were Asian, Pacific Islanders, and there were some others. And then there was another interesting study. So the UCSF, Benioff, the UCSF has a program, the Homelessness and Housing Initiative, that's done a pretty good survey trying to really understand some of these issues. And they went out and kind of surveyed unhoused across the state. And they found 82% of the people they surveyed had experienced mental health issues at some point, anxiety, depression, or actually some clinically diagnosed mental health issues. Now, this study actually wasn't looking at necessarily were they experiencing these before or after they entered homelessness. They're looking at it more from a perspective of what are the characteristics of people, what are their life experiences, and what are some of the challenges that need to be dealt with when providing aid and helping out. So they found 82% of the people had experienced some type of mental health issues. 65% had reported substance abuse at some point. 72% of them had been a victim of physical or sexual violence at some point in their lives. So there's a lot of challenges with this population. All right, some other kind of data that we've run across. So as Mike mentioned, the City of Sunnyvale is working on a strategic plan to address homelessness, and they've actually come up with some interesting information as part of the strategic plan. They're going through the process right now. And one of the things they looked at is kind of what triggers the loss of housing. So pretty much everyone that's unhoused right now, at some point in their lives, they were housed. They had a place to live, and something happened in their lives that caused them to become homeless. And again, back to the kind of the points about the prices of rent and the cost of housing. The biggest thing is rent increases. They lost their housing because the landlord increased their rent and they couldn't afford to pay it anymore, or they got evicted, or they lost their job and were no longer able to afford to pay their rent. There are some that actually, the trigger was family dissolution. So they get divorced, people move out of abusive relationships. There's some change in their family dynamic that triggers it. Cost of living is another important one. So their rent may not have gone up, but the cost of food goes up, or the cost of, and we've seen what's happened with the cost of pretty much everything else, that goes up, and they're no longer able to afford to pay rent. And then there are some other kind of non-financial reasons, kind of health related. They experience some health issue that cause them to become homeless. There is alcohol and drug use that does trigger it from time to time, incarceration. I'm actually not sure what the DV related is at the very bottom. This is just kind of going through this, and that's kind of a question that might be good to ask when they come back and present this. But the main reasons are, again, kind of related to the cost of housing, basically simply just not being able to afford to pay rent. And so how long are people unhoused? the majority of them have been unhoused for quite some time. So 44% have actually been unhoused for over 3 years. So there is a substantial population has chronically been unhoused. And this gets into kind of some of the issues. There's a very wide spectrum of aid that's needed by different people. Some people recently entered homelessness. Maybe they just need a little bit of help to get through some difficult times and get back on their feet. And there's others that have been unhoused for many years and require a lot more support and have a lot more challenges that they face. Excuse me a second. So other kind of conceptions of, again, kind of where do people, the unhoused live in Sunnyvale? So again, when people say homeless, kind of typically you get a picture of, oh, there's someone living in a tent in front of the library or something like that. But that actually is a fairly small portion of the unhoused in Sunnyvale, only 19%. And this is the data from the pig count that the city has presented as part of its strategic plan. Only 19% of the unhoused in Sunnyvale are actually living outdoors in tents and benches of parks and things like that. Most of the unhoused in Sunnyvale are actually living in their cars and RVs, 58% of them. And then there's a pretty substantial bit there also actually have some type of temporary shelter, the Hamlin shelter or some other type of temporary shelter where they're living. So what can be done about this? What are the types of things that are being done to kind of support this and try and help reduce the number of unhoused that we have? So prevention is kind of one of the biggest and kind of most successful things that's being done. So kind of helping households that are currently housed remain housed and then prevent them from entering homelessness. And the biggest program that's done is actually it's run by the county. It's the Santa Clara County's homeless prevention system. And currently every year they're helping over 2,500 households with direct financial assistance. So it's basically give people money so that they can afford to pay rent and stay in their homes for a period of time till they can manage on their own. So for Sunnyvale, what this looks like is per year, it's usually about $15,500 worth of aid that's given to these families to try and help them pay for rent and stay in their homes. And from the county wide, it's an incredibly successful program. Only 5% of these families that are helped wind up entering homelessness after 1 year. So it is very successful at keeping people in their homes. And the way it works is Santa Clara, the county actually doesn't directly administer this program. They actually work with 19 different other organizations across the country. And locally, Sunnyvale Community Services is the organization in our area that's covering this program. Last year, they served 326 households, providing assistance to them. So SES is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, implementer. We got Marie here. And the most successful organization that implements this program. Their rate actually only 2% of the people that they serve wind up entering homelessness. So they're actually doing better than the county averages as a whole. And while this program is great, it's helping out a lot of people. It's nowhere near the magnitude that we need. So even though last year they served countywide over 2,500 households, there were an additional 3,800 households that actually did enter homelessness last year. So it's not even 50% of the households that need help are getting it. It's a great program. It's incredibly successful, but there's still a much greater need than what the county can currently provide. So for prevention, there are other programs that are targeted towards trying to keep people in their homes. Sunnyvale actually has a number of things that the city does directly. They've actually passed a tenant protection ordinance, and they're actually working on revising this, which is basically protections if a landlord evicts someone without cause. Say the landlord wants to sell their property and turn it into townhouses or something like that. And they evict the residents, the landlords are required to provide financial assistance to those that get evicted. So there's a variety of ordinances that the city has to try and protect tenants. And the city also funds a program called Project Sentinel, a group called Project Sentinel, that helps with landlord mediation and disputes between tenants and landlords. So I think at least twice a month at the library, they offer kind of free clinics, and then they have some other programs to help people out with landlord mediation. So beyond the prevention, there are people that are, as we see that eventually wind up unhoused. So one of the main things to do kind of with the unhoused population that a lot of groups are focusing on is stabilization. Just for those that are unhoused right now, provide them safety, some basic needs so that they connect to services and then eventually move along the path towards finding a permanent home. And there are a lot of nonprofits that work in this area. SCS, Sunnyvale Community Services, that we've mentioned a lot, does a huge amount of work in this, food distribution, other direct assistance. Last year in total, they distributed, I think, over $2.5 million of direct assistance to people in our communities to help them out. That includes the prevention program that I mentioned previously and some others, but it's a huge amount of help that they give to people in our community. There's another nonprofit called We Hope. This is actually a nonprofit that's contracted by the City of Sunnyvale to operate some Sunnyvale's programs that I'll talk about in a second. There's a group called Helping Hands Silicon Valley. This is actually a volunteer-run organization. And their main goal is to kind of stabilize people and provide them with a pathway to housing. So they offer kind of direct food assistance. They provide hotel rooms, kind of short-term hotel rooms. They pay for hotels for people as needed, and a lot of other assistance. And then they try to regularly keep in touch with them in order to develop a plan for people on how they can move forward and move towards more permanent housing solutions. There's a group called Community SIVA that provides a lot of food assistance. They actually work across both Santa Clara and Alameda County. They provide over 6,000 meals each month to people in need. And Our Daily Bread is another local nonprofit that provides food assistance. They do lunch Monday and Wednesday and Friday. So this isn't a complete list. This is just some of the names you might hear about and some of the organizations that if you're interested, you're welcome to kind of find out more about them and get more involved. But beyond the nonprofits, there's also a number of government programs that are done for stabilization. So Sunnyvale actually does quite a bit in this area. They have a program called Dignity on Wheels that they fund. And this is basically a mobile trailer that has mobile hygiene services. So it has restrooms, laundry, showers, and this trailer goes to 2 different sites each week in Sunnyvale to provide these services, these hygiene services for people that need it. The city also works with We Hope to do street outreach. It's supposed to be eventually kind of weekly case management, so kind of getting involved with these people and doing weekly case management. There's some open questions right now on how effective this is being, and the city's looking into some of that. But the idea is to do street outreach to develop a plan for people for how they're going to transition to kind of permanent housing solutions. The city also does fund and provide a temporary hotel program. They actually rent 5 hotel rooms at a local motel and offer this, I think it's by default to kind of up to a year for people to stay there as they try and find more permanent housing solutions. And similarly, they also have an inclement weather program, which is when it's very hot and very cold outside, they'll rent additional hotel rooms and offer those to people to kind of offer them protection from the elements that are needed. And then the county also, I'm not quite as familiar with some of the larger county programs, but they also do outreach. They have safe parking, emergency shelters, and things like that. But the ultimate goal for all of this, though, is to actually provide a pathway to housing for people, to transition them into some type of stable, permanent housing solutions. And one program, and this is called the Tenant-Based Rental Assistance Program. This is actually a federal grant that the City of Sunnyvale applies for. So the city applies for this, gets the money, and then they have selected Sunnyvale Community Services to administer this. But it's a grant that pays for rental subsidies and case management for 40 people each year. And actually, Marie has some. She does so much. Oh, 40 households. Oh, yeah, I have the wrong term there. It's 40 households and 100 to 110 people each year. So it's a phenomenal program. It's been going on for a number of years, and it does incredible work to do that. But the main program that most people use to actually find stable house ways is actually run by the county. And so it's something called the Coordinated Entry System that Santa Clara County operates. And this is just kind of a kind of quick overview of what the program is. So initially, people get entered into a big database. So people have to fill out this survey called the VI SPDAT that you may hear as part of these discussions, which is kind of a long survey. It has actually, you have to disclose a lot of very personal information. It gets into a lot of details about your life situation, your experiences, and what your needs are. But they try to kind of do these services when people enter shelters, when people do outreach, when people show up for services like the mobile hygiene, things like that. They try to get people to fill out this survey, and then all of that goes into a county database called HMIS, which I've forgotten what it stands for. Something system. So it goes into this database, and then all of the users are prioritized in order and put into this big queue. And whenever some type of housing opportunity comes up, when there's space in a temporary housing shelter, when there's space in a rapid rehousing program, when there's some permanent supportive housing units that become available, the county goes through this database and looks at kind of who's on top of the priority list. It's not first come, first serve. It's ranked based on what your needs are. I'm actually not sure of all the different criteria they used, but it's not a first come, first serve. The county does some type of priority ranking for these individuals for different things. And then the county offers the different housing that becomes available to these people. So it's a nice system, but the difficulty is the capacity of this. So from 2015 to 2023, Santa Clara County entered over 38,000 households completed an assessment, that VI SPDAT assessment over those years. Only about half of them ever got referred to any type of housing program, 16,300. So once you get in this system, it's great, but at best you get about a 50% chance of getting offered housing out of this. But some of that housing is temporary housing and kind of other solutions. Kind of the long-term kind of gold standard permanent supportive housing. In 2024, the county only had 5,600 permanent supportive housing units that they could offer to people. They have a number in the pipeline, kind of about a little bit over 1,000 in the pipeline. But the available housing that's possible for people to get through this system is not quite at the level of what it needs to be. And that's not necessarily kind of a fault of the county or a fault of things like that. It's expensive. These programs are very expensive. This is some information. The county actually did a presentation to City Council at the beginning of April 7th, I think it was. And this is kind of something that stood out to me as the permanent supportive housing. When people get this, it costs the county over $37,000 per year for each individual. Now, that's not how much it costs to build these. Like we've seen kind of recently, like with the Mid-Penn project on Charles Street, like how difficult it is to get affordable housing built and how much it costs to get affordable housing built. This has nothing to do with kind of how much it costs to build this. This is the annual cost of the additional rent subsidies that are needed, the case management that's needed to offer these services. So I'm sure if there were kind of infinite resources, the county would have many more beds available and there'd be many more resources, but it's just kind of a very expensive to provide these services. And then finally, kind of once people get housing, it's not completely done yet. You need to make sure that they remain successfully housed. So there's a lot of case management, employment support, childcare assistance. So they've got housing, they might have a job, but they need to figure out childcare, providing financial literacy services. Often these are provided by affordable housing providers. So kind of in the affordable housing units, they actually have on-site case management, often funded by the county and other things. But there's a lot of work too, once people actually get housed, to make sure that they stay housed. So if you're interested in kind of getting involved or learning more about this, there's a number of different things you can do. The first thing kind of that's immediately coming up is on Tuesday, this next Tuesday. Sunnyvale is the Sunnyvale City Council is hearing proposals for a safe parking program in Sunnyvale. So a lot of our neighboring cities, Mountain View, Palo Alto, a lot of other neighboring cities have implemented safe parking programs, and council is going to be hearing about what are some of the options in Sunnyvale for doing this. So yeah, it's the second agenda item, so it's kind of the first real agenda item on the council meeting for Tuesday this week. Oh yeah, sure. Let me go back. Go right ahead. Yeah, actually, yeah. Do you have another question? Yeah, the question was, can we share this presentation? Yeah, I'm happy to share this. I don't know. Can I send that to you?
We can share a link to it. Also, the meetings are recorded. So we'll be posting the recording with the presentation, just what you're seeing here online after the meeting.
It would just be nice to have something to tape, like we just show it to show the other groups in the meetings.
Right.
Because I found this extremely informative and I'm really proud of this.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Yeah, we'll kind of send out the link to this and we can distribute that. And it'll have all the links in here that you can click on, so you don't have to take the pictures and type in the Zoom links on your own.
Yeah, so safe parking, it just, since it's coming up Tuesday, we have a large number of people, was it 75% living in vehicles. In Sunnyvale, there's no particular regulation and there are no dedicated sites for them to go. So, whereas in cities like Mountain View, there are designated areas where they can park. It's kind of a community where they can stay. And so the people in RVs or whatever are parking on the street in neighborhoods, which can cause issues there. So that's what's going to be discussed on Tuesday.
Oh, yep. Another question. Yeah.
To alleviate the leak that's from the tracking of drug addicts? And will there be anything in place to help those who are drug addicted in those safe parking places to, for lack of better term, spreading the drug use? Because my understanding is that a lot of times these places, people who are drug addicted do move into those places, and then they get other people addicted because they're so depressed and they get down on themselves. So has there been any discussion about how we will have tools in place in such a place as a safe parking place to help those who are dealing with addiction?
Yeah, so yeah, kind of the broader question is, kind of like what services would be offered as part of the safe parking program. Actually, I don't know that for sure. There is a group, Move Mountain View, that is operated a couple of safe parking sites in Mountain View and elsewhere that we've talked to, and they've talked a little bit to those things. Generally, their experience has been that there are not a lot of issues at these sites. The people that actually are able to actually find the safe parking sites are very happy to be there and don't want to risk losing the thing. So there's a lot of kind of self-motivation. The Mountain View ones, I'm pretty sure, also have kind of 24/7 on-site security and kind of do some other things like that. But I'm not a complete expert on all of that. All right, any other questions? And yeah, actually, if you have any questions online, kind of raise your hand or do something. We can kind of go through questions as people have them. A couple of other things that are coming up. Sunnyvale, in addition to the safe parking program, is developing a strategy to address homelessness, I believe is the title. And there should be a new draft of this coming out sometime this month. They presented an initial draft back in December, and then they've been working on revising that. And I think they're planning on releasing a new draft this month. But this is kind of the coordinated looking at all the programs Sunnyvale does and kind of what are some options that the city can do to address these issues. Oh, there's another document. All right, and the county as well, in addition to the city, the county is working on a strategy to address homelessness. And this is kind of what the county presented to our local city council a couple of weeks ago. And this is getting towards the end of the process for them. Actually, I haven't looked at this one too much, but specifically for our area, coming up on Thursday, April 30th, they're doing kind of an in-person meeting to kind of present this and kind of get feedback from the community on this program. And then the blue link there, it has a link. That's kind of their webpage for this strategy. It has a link to the document as well as information about this meeting. And they're also doing some meetings kind of across the county and some other locations if you can't make the April 30th one. And then kind of the last thing is get involved with local organizations. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm with a group called Livable Sunnyvale. So if you're interested in kind of finding out more about kind of what we've been doing, you can mail myself or Agnes Veith. Our emails are up there. Two other organizations I just kind of wanted to highlight. One is Helping Hands Silicon Valley. This is, again, a completely volunteer-run local organization providing direct assistance to the unhoused in our area. And so they've got a website that has information if you want to volunteer with them or if you want to donate. They're always looking for donations. They pay kind of out of the donations they get. They pay for the food assistance. They pay for the hotel rooms for people. They pay for a lot of direct assistance to these people. So it's a great organization. And then the other one is Sunnyvale Community Services. Again, they do huge amounts of work for our community. And so they've got a website if you want to volunteer or donate to them. That's the information. And that was it. Are there any questions or comments? Yeah, we got some in the room here.
So while we're running the mic over there, let me highlight a couple things. Since we're in a political season, I want to highlight the term housing first, which has been empirically shown all over the world to be the best approach to dealing with homelessness, which is basically get someone housing before attempting to solve all their other problems. And you will hear occasionally from candidates running that, well, before we give anybody housing, they've got to get off drugs and get a job and, get their medical things or whatever. But that has basically all those are easier to solve once you get them into some sort of shelter, some sort of housing. So that's an important thing as you hear forums or interviews with candidates to look out for. And the HMIS system that Chuck referred to, the county system that prioritizes the unhoused, this has come up in council meetings kind of repeatedly. The city is helping to fund affordable housing projects like the ones on Sonora Court. And council members ask, well, and certain number of those affordable housing units are prioritized for unhoused people. But as the council members ask, well, how many of these are from Sunnyvale? And currently, at least the site on the existing one on Sonora Court, none of them are. And I asked the same question for the one they're building across the street from that. It's because these individuals that are referred into the programs are being referred by the county HMIS system. So they don't really have a say in terms of who gets in there. So that's why that's happening. And so that's something to keep an eye on. So, Carol?
Some comments, Carol Weiss. Many people don't realize that a large number of those unhoused who live in cars or RVs actually are employed. They have jobs, but they're making minimum wage, which doesn't allow them to pay rent here. So yes, they are working people, unhoused. A second thing, we have some shortcomings in what we provide. For example, if I've come across unhoused women who were victims of sexual violence, and to get them housed, to get them the care they need, there's a wait list, and it can take 3 months for these women, even if they are traumatized, to get the help that they need. The VA used to be very responsive in helping veterans, and a large number of those who are unhoused are unfortunately veterans. But they haven't been, the VA has not been doing as much lately. They are supposed to be increasing the housing available, but that's off in the future. And finally, the unhoused that I've met with and spoken with don't have drug problems. As a matter of fact, what they've told me is that they could probably get into some kind of program more easily if they did have a drug problem. So go figure.
Thank you. I'm Marie Bernard from Sunnyvale Community Services. So it's good to be here. And I recognize a lot of the statistics. There are other statistics that we could look at as well. One of the headlines that I've got is from our program that serves the unhoused with our, what we call our self-select pantry, which is where people who don't have a kitchen come to get food. 22% of them are children. So we have a number of other statistics that show what a year looks like in Sunnyvale for people unhoused. And the other point is that the county, I don't think 10 years ago I would have said this, but the county has done extraordinary work to do prevention. And in fact, they told me that we are overrepresented in the prevention dollars we're consuming across the county versus our pit count. And they think it's because, and the fact that our pit count is relatively smaller. Again, everything is relative. It's a flawed number, but it's hopefully equally flawed across the whole network, that the prevention that we're doing is mattering. You also need to know that the money that we do get for what I would call the one-time assistance, which is way early in someone's journey, they've lost some hours in work, they've had a medical bill, they are finding that they had an unexpected car repair that they needed, and so they're about to miss 1 month of rent. That one-time assistance is what we call not, it's not requiring case management, it's requiring one-time assistance. And I call it the trip, but they haven't fallen yet syndrome. That funding that we get from the county, not from the HPS system, but other funding, is now being cut from all of the emergency assistance agencies for the budget we just got announced by OSH. They're cutting their own head count, and they're going to be cutting across the county near over $2 million, of which $300,000 came to Sunnyvale. And we helped with one-time assistance 62 households with that funding. One time, didn't require an awful lot of several months of case management because the folks were going to be able to stand up after that one-time assistance. And that prevention keeps going to be on the table to chop. And then as you saw, the numbers then rise in the number of people who need to be helped with lots and lots of stuff. And that prevention is something that the county is really proud of the work that they've done, but they're also proud of what we've done in Sunnyvale. We are the largest provider of those 19. And I have to say that the city of Sunnyvale has almost reversed how they're looking at this, because it used to be that the county was expected to do all the homelessness prevention, and everybody else did the work with the unhoused, and everybody else was doing the prevention work. And now the county has seen the wisdom of moving everything upstream and trying to get people to stay in housing. So I applaud them. They are definitely trying to make their budget work, but the prevention work that we've been doing across the county is at risk in a lot of ways. We've been trying to make it up with foundations, with corporations, with individuals giving, and use those dollars, but the systemic influx of cash is at risk for just about everything we're doing, and the city is not funding that at this point. So we just need to know that one way or the other, we're going to deal with these issues. And in the plan to address homelessness, there's very little about prevention. And this is why I've learned that if an organization doesn't have control over the dollars, then they're not focused on it. We don't care what flavor the dollars are. We just care that we're going to be able to deliver the services. And we use a quilt of funding, and it doesn't have to just be from one source. So you do need to know that from Palo Alto to Gilroy, there's going to be cuts in homelessness prevention, period. And that on top of that, there's going to be more pressure on people who are unhoused to get the services that they need. The last thing I'll say is that the first 3 months of someone's unhoused experience are critical. After that, you lose everything. You lose your job, you lose your family, you lose your paperwork, you lose your car, you lose everything. It's either stolen or you can't carry it on your back. And those first critical months are so important, but that's why prevention is so important as well. So applause to the people in Sunnyvale who has kept us going all these years to do this prevention. And I'm very proud that we are consuming more prevention than anybody else in the county. We deserve to do that, and hopefully we can continue to do it.
There's also some in the chat as well, some questions.
Oh, okay. Yeah, let me look
continue
at the
with
chat.
those in the room. There's Linda Sell.
Hi, this was really informative. And so there was this number, like I think it was 15,000 per something per year for preventive in your slide, 15,000. And then you had this other number that was like 38,000. What is the difference between those two?
Let me see if I can. I'm sorry, it was the prevention or the permanent support? These two numbers?
Yeah, so there's that number.
Yeah.
And then there's the 15,000. So the 15,000 is that how is that? Why is that so much less?
Yeah, so the 15,000 was for the preventive the prevention services. So this is someone that's actually currently housed, and it's just giving them rental assistance or other kind of direct financial assistance so that they can pay, kind of bridge and pay the rent. The permanent supportive housing is more for someone that is currently unhoused. Now they're getting moved into a permanent housing situation. So I assume it's because they have a lot less resources. They're really starting to get back on their feet rather than someone who is currently in housing right now and just needs a little bit of extra help to get going. And that's why the prevention, like the dollars spent on prevention are really much more effective than than having to deal with someone after they've become unhoused and get them back into housing. It's much easier to keep someone.
It's like
Marie may have some
more than double the cost.
Better commentary on that.
Like when someone's unhoused, and it's like double the cost.
Easily double, if not tripled. And the thing is that it's a long-term problem. So the cost to an unhoused person that's been tracked across the county has been for years well over $80,000 in cost of visits to the ER, cost and not just for the housing part of it, but for the infrastructure and the need for public safety and other needs that arise when someone's unhoused. So there are a lot of unintended consequences of not giving somebody housing that really ripple in. It's about, I think it's $83,000 a year has been calculated, the cost to our county somewhere if someone is unhoused.
One last question. And then Marie mentioned like over 300K has been cut from your budget. And that like is budget that would have gone towards the people that are currently housed. So the 15K is being cut.
I don't know where the 15K came from. The average cost of the one-time assistance that we give is about $2,500 to $3,000 in that program. So for the 62 households that we help in those two funds with $300,000, it accounts for 1.4 head count and 62 households being helped with usually one-time assistance that is about $2,500. So it's the cheapest part. So that 15,000, I'd have to look at what those numbers might be, but it would have to include either housing as well as case management or maybe something else. I don't know, Chuck.
Yeah, I'll go back and look at it. I'm pretty sure that came from the presentation to council last April. So the county actually came in and did a presentation to council on kind of how they're trying to revise their strategy, as well as they presented actually a whole bunch of statistics about basically how much money the county is providing to Sunnyvale. And I think that 15,000 was probably like the total amount they gave for preventative assistance divided by the number of households that were served.
And doing the math, dividing 62 households into about $300,000, you get that it was about 5K per household.
Okay.
That is being helped with that. Because again, these are not unhoused people who need one-time assistance and don't need wraparound case management services. So it's the folks who are stumbling but haven't fallen into dire straits yet.
Yeah. Then I think that 15,000 then was more for the people that don't just need the one time. There's still the people that need the preventive housing. So they're actually are currently housed right now and they need help, but it's not a one-time help. It's more of the longer year-long type of program.
And then this observation. So if you're cutting the 15K per household and then they become homeless, then that'll be double the cost. Okay.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Social commentary. Is this on? Hello? Yeah, social commentary here. My parents lived through the Depression. Can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? So my parents lived through the Depression because I'm really old. And I think this is like a dirty underbelly of the United States, that we want government to take care of this instead of a community taking care of it. I don't know much about it. I know Livable Sunnyvale has a grant on this, but I'd be interested to know how many people that are homeless have lost their social network. Were they members of churches? Were they member of the YMCA? Were they member of a synagogue? That kind of stuff. And did they reach out to that community? I think one of the problems in the United States is we're so individualized that we don't know what to do when we run into trouble. And it's like, because I'm really independent, but if I lost my housing, I would probably be on the street. So I think a lot of us are in that situation. And I think it's not government's, I sort of believe that government is not the solution here. It's not the county, it's people. And I think it's really sad that we collectively don't reach out to these people that are obviously good people. Not all of them are drug addicts or, alcoholics or prisoners or all that kind of stuff. That's not true. They're regular people. And unfortunately, we do not reach out to them to provide them housing. And there's so many people in this city, myself included, who live alone, who might be able to bring in a person, but we don't know the people that would bring in, and therefore there's fear and stuff. It would be really cool if we could, as a community, reach out and figure out a way that people that do have rooms could house, some people. That would be really cool. Anyway, that's my social commentary for the day. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
I want to highlight the great work Livable Sunnyvale is doing to providing input to the city as we put together the strategic plan. And Chuck, Agnes, and the committee are working with Sunnyvale Community Services, Helping Hands, Silicon Valley, and there are some unhoused individuals as well providing input to this, and the school. We haven't even hardly touched on unhoused students, which is a whole other problem.
Yeah, and actually, if I could chime once more in kind of related to Gail's comment about getting involved,
Sure.
I'm going to put a plug in again for Helping Hands Silicon Valley. So really kind of like individual community members. It's just a group of volunteers that got together one day and said, I want to do something about this. And they go out every week and provide direct assistance. I think Mike goes out with them every Saturday to the library to help out. So yeah, getting back to Gail's point, got to put a plug in for Helping Hands. They're one of the groups that's really kind of taken that. Kind of, we need to do something about this as a community message. All right, thank you.
All right, thanks, thanks, Chuck. All right, we can move on to our next topic, which is the flock surveillance cameras. I think I see Melissa here, and Austin is here. Okay, I saw you were on Zoom, but you're only a few feet away, so that's good. Okay. Unplug your.
You will stay there. Right.
Okay, I think we may have had some. Is my microphone still not clear? We can switch to another mic. Okay, it cured itself. Who knows? It's probably my voice. All right, so our next topic is these flock cameras, which are deployed in Sunnyvale. And Mountain View recently had a city council meeting on this subject, and a number of people from a fellow progressive organization, Indivisible, Palo Alto Plus, who we have heard from at an earlier meeting a few months ago, gave an excellent presentation on this subject. And so I invited a group here to come and talk to us, and I'll let you introduce yourselves.
All right. Sounds like you can hear me. Yeah, so my name is Austin Marshall. I'm here representing Indivisible, Palo Alto Plus. I am a co-lead of a flock-based or a flock-focused action team within Indivisible, Palo Alto Plus, and I'm joined here by Melissa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Melissa Dinwiddie. I'm the founder of Indivisible Palo Alto Plus and on the core leadership team. And I was one of the many speakers along with Austin, at the Mountain View City Council meeting.
Yeah, I think actually I had ceded my time to you. I was definitely in the room there, but I don't think I got to speak, and we'll talk a little bit about how that worked. Yeah, so thank you for joining us here, and we'll talk about flock here real quick. So just to make things a little concrete, before this meeting, I went to Google Earth and tried looking for the nearest one of these, so we know exactly what we're talking about. And so this is, one of them on Fair Oaks, not too far from here. And so usually they look like this. I actually prefer this one right here. Looks like at a different time on Google Earth or Google Maps that someone must have had an accident or something and knocked it off course here. So up close, they look a little bit like this. These are your standard flock automated license plate reader. They typically are accompanied by a solar panel, and they have this sort of elongated black camera looking thing. Usually it's on a black pole, but sometimes you'll see it on other infrastructure as well. And there's actually a newer version of it that looks like a little bit shorter version of this, but that's typically what you'd expect to see. Their basic functionality is they collect information. They are information collection devices. They are a component of mass surveillance here in Sunnyvale, here in the Bay Area region and throughout the state of California. Typically what they do is as you drive by, it'll snap a picture of your vehicle, save it on the device, send it up to the cloud, and that enters into a database that can be searched. And so there are approximately throughout the country 80,000 of these cameras. There are dozens here in Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale has some of its own, and that's in addition to any of the private installations of these. So it's not just our public agencies that use these, it's our cities, it's our counties, it's our public universities, it's our homeowners associations, individual neighborhood watch groups, private businesses. The company was started in 2019, headquartered out of Georgia. These cameras exist in 49 states. They claim over 6,000 communities. As I was preparing this presentation, I learned that they recently closed on yet another round of financing. So the company is, as of yesterday, valued at $8.4 billion. And that was arrived at through their Series I funding round at $3,000 per camera per year. If you're doing a little bit of mental math here, and if since we are based in Silicon Valley, this may be concerning. At that valuation and that cost per camera, it would take them roughly 28 years to justify that valuation. And that's not counting any of their expenses, whether that's salaries, rent, the actual cost of the cameras themselves, maintenance, etc. So for someone with a little bit of experience in Silicon Valley and tech, that's a little concerning to me. I question, what are they going to do to justify that valuation? And but yeah, let's kind of dig into a little bit about that. So usually when we talk about flock and we start talking about why we should be concerned about it, one of the first questions that people come to mind is, well, how is this legal? And so let's just dig right into it. It's legal because we have laws that make them legal. And so that starts with SB 34. This is your baseline automated license plate recognition systems law. Flock is not the only operator in this space. And the concept of a automated license plate reader is not particularly new. And what that law does is it establishes requirements for public agencies who deploy these things to establish usage policies, set some rules regarding their audit logs, who can access it, et cetera. It also establishes that it would be illegal to share data outside of the state, and we'll explore that a little bit here in a moment. And then, so then there's also the SB 54. This is the California Values Act. This is the law that essentially limits any sort of cooperation with immigration. And I'll get into the details here in a little bit. But that's another major issue that we see with FLOC that we need to be concerned with. Late last year, there was SB 274. This was well, actually, I'll take a step back here. One of the things that we're realizing with these two laws that we have on the books here, SB 34 and SB 54, is even though it does establish these requirements that public agencies create, these policies that require their police officers and employees to follow the rules, there's actually very little, if not any enforcement mechanism whatsoever. There's a lot of inconsistency in how these policies are established. And so we have this very inconsistent patchwork of policies that exist in our cities, counties, and universities. So there was this bill, SB 274, that was passed. It was a very popular bipartisan bill that passed both chambers of the California legislature. It would have limited the data retention to just 30 days, would have imposed mandatory training requirements, would have imposed some new guardrails, and importantly, would have established some state oversight of these cameras. Unfortunately, Gavin Newsom vetoed this bill at the end of last year. And so there's a new one on the books that we're following. It's SB 1013. It's very similar to 274. It's actually a little bit stronger. I'm hoping that our next governor will have an opportunity to sign this into law. So, and yeah, as I continue through this presentation, you might understand why we need something like this. So I just kind of want to recognize how we got here. Sunnyvale, like many of our cities here in the Bay Area, and I would say actually all of the cities in the Bay Area have kind of gone through this very similar process. So usually it will start with a private installation of a camera, right? So there might be like one or two, it's a private business or a homeowners association, or let's say Home Depot or Lowe's will have these cameras set up. And then the company will reach out to the local police department and offer a pilot, give them access to the cameras, and then start working on establishing some grants to help pay for some cameras of their own. Usually those grants are either a federal grant or a state grant or some combination of the two. And they come from all sorts of government agencies. So the cities will start out with a pilot that's anywhere from 9 months to 18 months. The pilot may not cost the cities anything. As a result of these grants, and when the pilot ends, they start moving to a permanent installation. That's through a master services agreement. Those establish a contract with a term, usually anywhere from 3 to 5 years. And then the next phase is renewal and expansion. And so where Sunnyvale is right here, we're kind of in the middle of that MSA renewal and expansion phase. And so these cameras are already up and running. The City of Sunnyvale does, like every other public agency, have its own ALPR policies. I won't get into them. They're very similar to what we'll see in most cities, and that's because they're required to create it following SB 34, like I mentioned before. Another thing I wanted to highlight, and every city will have its own what's called a transparency portal. This is a web page that Flock publishes. It has all the details regarding how many cameras are installed, what the basic prohibited uses are, what their expected uses are, and importantly, who they share with and who is shared with them. So one of the things I want to kind of dial into here is Flock is a company. They sell services to cities, including Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale, Department of Public Safety? Yeah. So they're primarily operating these cameras, and they have access to them. They can search for vehicles based off of a license plate number, but also features of the vehicle like year, make, model, color, whether or not a vehicle has a roof rack or bumper stickers or various other identifying details. Fundamentally, these are AI-based cameras that are used to recognize features of vehicles in case there's a missing or incorrect license plate. Every customer of Flock, every city, for example, will establish a mutual sharing arrangement with any number of other public agencies. So for example, Sunnyvale shares with all the neighboring cities, and all those neighboring cities will share with Sunnyvale. And so they all establish their own sort of policies about who gets to access it and what the protocols for doing so are. I just wanted to make a quick comment here. If you end up trying to visit this link here, this transparency portal page, try not to do it on VPN. They have a policy for whatever reason to not allow people to access it from a VPN, which is not particularly transparent, if you ask me. Cool. So why should we be concerned about this? I want to walk through a couple of categories of issues that we see with these things and reasons why we care about it in the first place. So first and foremost, ICE, CBP, federal agencies have access to these cameras. There's myriad stories in the news regarding the different ways in which they have access. There were times in which, for example, CBP and ICE had pilots with the company and they were able to access these things. Sometimes these are, so those would be like a direct access to it, but then there's also a class of ways to access these things that we call backdoor and sometimes accidental. Usually what we mean by like a backdoor access or an accidental would be, for example, if let's say ICE or CBP is working with a local police department, which that isn't supposed to happen in California, but it does, and we can get into that here in a little bit. We'll ask them to run a search on their behalf. And so even though these things are logged, even though they're auditable, there's policies about it. A search can be entered by a police officer or employee of an agency that has access, but they're doing it on behalf of a federal agency. There have been cases, for example, when they're in, let's say, Louisville, Kentucky, for example, there was a story in which there was a collaboration between the DEA and the police department there for a legitimate law enforcement purpose. And they had provided a username and password to the DEA agent to be able to run the searches. 6 months later, we had this whole thing happen with federal agencies working on behalf of ICE. And just so happens that this particular DEA agent was now performing duties for ICE and was using those credentials, for example, to run searches. And so those searches would have appeared as if they were coming from the Louisville police, so a specific officer. There's also, for example, the NCRIC, which is I believe it's the Northern California Real-Time Investigation Center, something along those lines. And if you look at the Sunnyvale Transparency Portal, you'll find that the NCRC is a mutual sharing partner with Sunnyvale to have access to Flock. These are federally funded. They are what I would call a way of sort of laundering access to these things. And it's a way in which there is potential cooperation with federal agencies.
So, Austin, just to be clear, I think state law, right, nominally at least prevents access from federal and ICE and so on into these systems. So what we're talking about is, like you say, the back door or ways that they may be getting around that prohibition.
Yes, that's exactly right. So even though these things are against the law, even though our cities have policies, even though there are professional norms, we're still finding that just because something is illegal doesn't mean it doesn't happen. And so this is why something, we're concerned about.
Yeah, like data leaks we see all the time from various companies and so on.
Absolutely. There's a case which we refer to as the Texas abortion case. This refers to a woman who was tracked down by the Johnson County Sheriff's Office in Texas. I believe they tracked her down in Washington. They had claimed it was a wellness check following a domestic violence incident, which is true that did happen. At the same time, we find out that she was in fact being investigated criminally, and the DA was planning on filing charges. And so the narrative from Flock and the police shifted as we learned more about this case. And it was an incident in which both the Flock and, in this case, the Johnson County lied to the public about this very sensitive subject. Again, these things are fundamentally AI cameras. AIs are probability machines, and they're prone to mistakes. There have been multiple instances in which a license plate was misread, and that resulted in a guns out police interaction with innocent civilians. There was actually a case here near here in Atherton for this very reason. It resulted in a $45,000 settlement. And so this is another reason why our cities might want to be concerned about these types of things. They could be setting themselves up for lawsuits as a result of these things which are inherently imperfect. Some research had sort of found that these things are, have kind of like a 10% false positive rate. I happen to know that as you're using these things and you're conducting your searches, you have the option to specify what your confidence level is. And so that's one area in which you can kind of make something, sort of widen the net for what you're searching for, but as a result, it could pick up data that you're not intending. And then another area that is particularly concerning is myriad stories of abuses, and these are often employees of our cities and police departments, usually sworn officers, and often the targets of these types of abuse are the partners of individual officers. So for example, there was a recent case out of Costa Mesa in which an Orange County police officer pled guilty for using these cameras to track his mistress and harassed them with thousands of texts and phone calls. There was a case out of Menasha, Wisconsin recently that was received a lot of attention. And then there was a Georgia police chief who was arrested for using these cameras for stalking and harassment. And again, this is a case where it's illegal, but the fact that it's illegal doesn't mean that it isn't subject to abuse. In this particular Georgia police chief case, we'll revisit it here in a moment, because that the searches by that officer appeared in search audits in Santa Cruz and Capitola. I think it's very likely that their searches would appear in most of the cities here in the Bay Area. But there's some challenges that we have in being able to ascertain whether or not that was the case. That specific investigation kicked off a series of events that resulted in the city of Santa Cruz canceling its contract. At first, the police, the Santa Cruz police chief denied that it happened. Then they admitted that it happened. And then in searching, for more information about it, they discovered searches that were associated with ICE and CBP. So this was a concrete example in which a local city discovered that their flock cameras were being accessed by ICE in violation of SB 54. They were being accessed by out-of-state agencies in violation of SB 34. And I think the city of Santa Cruz did the reasonable thing here and canceled their contract. Shortly thereafter, a similar thing happened in Mountain View. Some individuals were trying to access the audit information that the city had refused to provide. The Mountain View Voice had gotten involved, and when they finally did receive that information, they were able to confirm that 6 offices of 4 federal agencies had searched Mountain View's data, and part of it was the result of the cameras being set up for what's called a national lookup, which is not supposed to happen. There's still, I think, a little bit of dispute over how that happened. It's unclear whether this was done by Flock or it was the result of Mountain View not understanding what they were doing at the time. Chief Canfield in Mountain View had come out and said that, in fact, they did do everything right, and Flock has pointed the finger at the city. So there's a little bit of a blame game that's happening.
Yeah, I did watch the Mountain View council meeting, and it was very interesting that the police chief and that they there was a question about how that access was done, but a lot of this just seems like incompetence writ large. The same kind of abuses could occur if people could access your credit card records, your financial records, your tax returns, and so on. If these were exposed in that way, the same kind of damage can happen. And you know what? But those are generally able to be protected, and yet Flock doesn't seem to be able to do that. And you, no, we haven't mentioned there's a couple competitors to Flock who do the same thing, but they don't reveal anything about what they're doing or their safety measures. So they don't come up in these discussions because they don't tell you what they're doing. But that's another issue. But it seems like it all comes down to control of the data and privacy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And I would actually argue that it's more negligence in addition to incompetence. You know, at the same time that we were arguing in Mountain View that Mountain View should cancel its contract, literally on the same day, Santa Clara County Board of Supervisors was having this conversation. And they ultimately decided to amend their surveillance use policy, which governs the sheriff's access to Flock in Los Altos Hills, Saratoga, and Cupertino, and remove Flock as an approved vendor. So that sort of jeopardized, called in question whether or not those cities could continue using Flock. I did want to go back to something that you said a moment ago with these like different companies and what sets Flock apart from the others. And one of the reasons why Flock was able to become as popular as it did so quickly is one of their tactics in going into a city is they're able to submit what they call these sole provider letters. And these sole provider letters are a letter that is coming from the CEO himself, addressed to the city, that basically say, we are the only provider of this technology that does exactly what we do. And therefore, there's no need to do any sort of competitive bidding. So they go straight to Flock and they ignore these other vendors. And one of the reasons that they're able to say that is because they hold a patent on this sort of mutual sharing arrangement that these other providers do. So even though these other ALPR vendors could be problematic on their own, they don't have this specific feature that Flock is able to go to these cities and kind of get past this competitive bid process. San Jose is having a moment with Flock right now. There's the subject of 2 lawsuits currently. One is happening at the city level. It might be at the county level. This is a lawsuit that was brought by the Electronic Frontier Foundation and the ACLU on behalf of a pair of organizations, Siren and Care, and they're alleging, and I would agree with them, that these cameras put these communities at risk because the cameras are placed near sensitive locations like churches, synagogues, mosques, etc. And then they're also, endangering the lives of the immigrant community in San Jose. The target of that particular lawsuit is Mayor Matt Mahan and the police chief in San Jose. This past week, a new lawsuit was filed on behalf of 3 residents. This is a lawsuit that was filed in the federal district, so it's a federal lawsuit and it's a class action lawsuit. Their goal is similar to what they attempted in Norfolk, Virginia, which is to bring it to the Supreme Court. So for background, they filed a lawsuit in Norfolk, Virginia. There was one judge who basically sided with Flock. So they're appealing that decision and trying to move that forward. And at the same time, they opened up a new lawsuit in San Jose, which of course has, it's a different circuit, different district, different case law, and different opinions of judges. So, hopefully they're trying to get a different outcome here as they work on appealing the process in Norfolk. There were some recent policy changes in San Jose, and one of the reasons they were the targets of these lawsuits was their data retention policies. They were holding on to data for 365 days. They brought it down to 30, which is the norm. In my opinion, 30 days is still way too long. It's 500 of these cameras peppered throughout San Jose, including near sensitive locations. So that would include, places of worship. It includes, healthcare facilities, immigration lawyers, et cetera. And at the same time, Matt Mahan, who has come out as this huge proponent of the technology and of the company, as he is launching his campaign for governor, it was revealed that over $1 million of money was contributed to his gubernatorial campaign by notable Flock investors. And so this is not just like 1 or 2, it's like a dozen of them. And so it calls into question whether or not it's appropriate for someone who has the ability to set policy in the city regarding these cameras to be accepting money from the company as he pursues his gubernatorial campaign. There's a quick question in the back there. Do you want to do questions or save it?
No,
okay.
Yeah, I think pointing out the deficiencies is simple.
Yeah.
Because there's many, because it's new technology. So what you're reciting here, it just seems like there's not enough audits here on what goes where and to whom. And my only commentary would be, what is the UK doing about the way they use their cameras? They have far more cameras, I think, than any other country in the West. They're all over the place. And I think you have to look to a country that has established rules and then figure out how to use those here. Because all the things you're pointing out to me are flaws that a city or a county isn't looking at. You need to have use cases like, you have to figure out what misuse is, and then that has to be spewed out like every day. And then the chief of police or somebody or the county people, they have to get audit reports, and then they need to be looked at, and then you figure out how to manage this. I think it's, you don't want to, I used to have a boss at Diners Club, he used to say, don't throw away the baby, don't throw away the baby with the bathwater. I think this thing might have some use, but you have to figure out how the heck to audit it. And that's the big thing. All the things you're pointing out, I mean, police officers have the ability to get into data systems that, you and I don't know about. And I know that because I was in a brawl in New York City, and one of the guys that I worked with was an attorney, and he was able to get all this stuff on the guy that hit us by using police databases. And I know he was doing it illegally. So this happens all the time. So I think you're right, but it's like, it's iceberg. You really have to manage it.
Cool. Thank you for your comment. I'll address it here in a little bit in Q&A as we talk about what we want to do next, or what we hope to do. And so kind of getting into that a little bit as the toolkit that we have available to us as ordinary citizens who are concerned about this type of thing. As an activist who's taken interest in this particular thing, the one of the most effective tools that I found is, the California Public Records Act, which allows individuals to request public records from our public agencies. And through that, you're able to get access to different types of audits. One of those audits is a network audit, and another is the organization audit. These are terms of industry, or term of art rather, that reflect files that these agencies publish that describe who is searching these things and why. You're able to look up your purchase orders, your memoranda and understanding, contracts, any sort of correspondence with the company, and then lobbying your local elected officials, right? And so this is an opportunity where you can take action and engage with your local elected officials and let them know that this is an issue that is important to you. And then finally, organizing. Organizing is probably our strongest power here. It's what we're doing right now. It's working together. It's reaching out with different organizations. And I kind of want to shift to one of the things that we've done in that space, which is this Pause Off initiative. And I'll give just kind of a brief overview of this, and I'll hand it over to Melissa if she has any comments on it. But so this is a campaign that Indivisible, Palo Alto Plus launched. It's called Pets Against Warrantless Surveillance, and it's a number of things. It's a campaign, it's a petition, and it's a website, and it's an opportunity to kind of engage with the public on this particular issue. So did you want to say anything about it?
Sure. So this was a creative, fun way to try and educate the public. And it was specifically an initiative that we did in conjunction with No King's Day in Palo Alto. Did anyone participate in No King's Day here on March 28th? Excellent, great. So it had multiple components, but again, it was just an attempt to get really creative and fun as a way to draw people into this concept, because a lot of people are just not familiar. They don't even know that these license plate readers exist. And so first to educate people and get them intrigued, curious, educated, and hopefully interested in making a difference. And so we had this stand with people in inflatable animal costumes. Why animals? Because a lot of people have pets, and they can relate to the idea of pets know surveillance. Dogs and cats understand surveillance. We want our dogs and our cats to do surveillance for us, but we don't want AI to be doing warrantless surveillance of us. That does not make us safe. And so people kind of understood that concept. I designed these little zines that was a much more fun and interactive way for people to interact with the concepts rather than giving them, a big sheet of paper. They had this little booklet that's fun and easy to understand with fun little graphics. What else did we do? There was a big map that we designed and printed out that showed a big chunk of the area with all the flock cameras. So people could actually see, oh my God, look at that's where there are so many cameras. I had no idea. There were also our station at King's Day was within sight of some cameras. Right, we were right close to the crosswalk by Palo Alto High School, and there's the cameras right there. And one of our very creative team members put together these 8-foot tall triangle. There were 3 of them, so they formed a triangle that went around the pole, didn't touch the pole, but went around the pole with all these amazing graphics. So when people came up to the pole, there were arrows pointing up to the cameras and all these graphics that showed pets and information about that's an AI flock camera, and this is what it does. And so it drew people in, educated them, had the map and all sorts of other things. And there was a petition for people to sign. There were buttons that they could pick up. There were dog bandanas that they could, swag that they could get for their dog that had the graphic on it, the one of those circle graphics, Pets Against Warrantless Surveillance. So it was just a really fun way for people to engage with this concept and learn about it. And it was very effective.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if you're interested afterwards, I'd be happy to give you one of the zines.
Right. So what are the next steps? So one thing you can do is you can visit pawsoff.org and sign the petition. And that serves 2 purposes. One is it gives us the ability to show our local electeds that this is a thing that their constituents care about. As we take that to, Palo Alto, Sunnyvale, our, regional cities, we have, in Stanford, we have the ability to say, look, it's not just us, weirdos who are concerned about privacy. Like this is a problem that the general public is concerned with. And then the other function of that is we're able to reach back out to people who sign this petition and say, we have an opportunity to make a difference here. And the next most immediate one of those is right here in Sunnyvale on Tuesday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Flock will be on the agenda. Considering the future of the flock within the city, they'll be receiving a staff report as well. And so, you can visit in person or it'll be on Zoom. I've left a link here that will take you to a toolkit that has, sort of a sample speech, a sample letter, some links to reasons, why you should be concerned about it, a lot of the same stuff that I presented here.
I want to add to that, having been at the Mountain View City Council meeting where they were discussing what to do about their flock contract, having the chief of police make a statement about it obviously was very powerful, but I wrote down as people went up to the microphone, each person had a max of 90 seconds. And in the Mountain View City Council, people could cede their time. And so two people, I was one of those people who volunteered to do this. Two people spoke for a greater chunk of time. But I wrote down as each person spoke, whether they were anti the contract or pro the contract, and one after another person got up and spoke for their 90 seconds saying, please cancel the contract. I do not want Flock surveilling me without a warrant as I'm walking about my day, as I'm driving around, as I'm going to a protest, or as I'm thinking about my neighbors who are immigrants. I do not want them being surveilled without a warrant. Whatever, they were just telling their personal story, one after another after another. Out of that, there might have been 100 people. There were so many people, first in person, then on Zoom. There were only 2 people who wanted Flock to stay. And almost every single one of the people said, I want you to get rid of the contract. I don't want Flock, and I don't want any ALPR. I don't want any AI automatic license plate readers. And it was so powerful to hear that over and over and over again. And I am quite sure that it was having so many people hearing from the community that made a difference. If they did not have the voices of the community at that council meeting, that council decision, it was unanimous, that council decision might have been different. So it's really important for people to show up. I'm not a Sunnyvale resident, but I'm going to show up because I drive through Sunnyvale and I'm impacted. My car is being photographed. It impacts me. And also I care about the people who are being hurt by what's happening because of these ALPR cameras. It's just not right. And I'm terrified about as these technologies are getting their claws, sinking their claws in deeper and deeper, it's going to be harder and harder to pull them out. And we are becoming less and less safe the deeper these technologies are getting sunk into our society. Privacy is safety. And the more these technologies get sunk in, the less safe we become. And the data, once it's up there, it's in the cloud, and then we are all less safe because it's so easy for the federal government to get their claws on it. And then we are all incredibly unsafe.
Yeah, so I think you raise an important point, and where I can see we're running over here a little bit in time, but if there are questions online or here, let's try and quickly get to them. But it seems like there's 2, and I'm glad you mentioned the federal government. There's kind of 2 levels here. There is as we talked about earlier, just the vulnerabilities built into the system that would occur with almost anything. If the city was banking with a bank whose records could be penetrated from all over the country or whatever, that would be an absurd situation that no one would tolerate. They would immediately quit banking with that bank. But there's so those kind of things we know could be solved because we solve them in every other possible arena. But there's a whole other level in the world we live in that we cannot trust our federal government. We cannot trust other states. And to what extent, even if even our financial records or something, to what extent the weaponized Department of Justice or whatever can get into those, if those records exist, can they get in with those or come in with warrants of some kind or even without warrants? And that's just a whole other level that it prevents us from doing things that I think, like banking, that might make sense otherwise, but in a situation where we cannot trust federal authorities, it opens up a whole new can of worms. So I don't know, are there any other, I don't see any questions online, anyone raising their hand?
Hi, I assume that this flock is for solving crimes. Did the Mountain View Sheriff say how many crimes have actually been solved because of this system?
I don't know that there was a definitive amount where they said these were the number of crimes that were solved. One thing that we did see in Mountain View, and we see pretty much everywhere we're likely to see on Tuesday, are specific anecdotes. Where they say, okay, there was this crime, it was solved with a ALPR, and this other crime. And those are good for sort of getting at the emotional side of it. But they also there's sort of two problems with it. One, it completely ignores the possibility that crime, and the very likelihood that it would have been solved without it, right? So we've been solving crime for centuries without these things. And then the other side of it is, even though there might be these like specific anecdotes, the jury is out as to whether or not they are able to stop or prevent crime in aggregate as a whole. And so if you watch their material and watch the way they talk, these things aren't actually necessarily used to reduce or prevent crime. They may be used to solve crime, but taking a step back is like, are they actually having the intended effect? And the answer is not really. No. Yeah. Yeah, it's just not supported by the data. Right.
Flock isn't the only system that's used.
No.
And there is an automatic handheld thing that the police all use.
Mm-hmm.
So the only difference that I understand is Flock is located specifically at least the Sunnyvale story that I heard, is that they're located at the entry and exits from on arterials from Sunnyvale. And so I'm wondering, what is the difference between these two? I understood they were all protected databases.
Yes. So the technology of license plate detection, license plate recorders is not new, right? And these things have existed, and they're used, for example, for like parking enforcement. And a lot of times there are license plate readers built into police cruisers that are picking up data as they drive around. So one of the differences is the business model of Flock, right? And so Flock has that mutual sharing relationship that they're able to grant access to all these different organizations.
I think the ability to do so and the way that it's enabled are two different things, as I understand it. That you can disable that sharing as well. And that would be the protection against almost everything that you've been talking about here. So I'm just kind of curious about how, I'm not a tech person. So how's that different from what we're already getting that police have on their cars, and that they have the little things that they can shine in the parking lot or whatever?
But are you asking how they would like the functions of them?
It instantly gives them what the DMV information, right? And what we see on Flock, the picture that you see is the car and the driver's, and not the driver's license, but the plate, right? That's all they see. So I'm wondering, what's the how does that cross over, or how is it different?
So they differ in a couple of ways, but I mean, I think they're both problematic from my perspective. They are both forms of surveillance, and they are both invasive in their own ways. But they do have they work differently from each other, but they're both fundamentally the same technology.
I think Stephen Meyer has a question.
Hi, yeah, it's Steve Meyer. I kind of have a rebuttal comment regarding the statements on usefulness. So Sunnyvale DPS has put out some information. They claim that they have been able to identify and arrest 61 suspects. They were able to interrupt a jewelry store robbery, a strong arm robbery, which we know we have a problem with. A number of jewelry store robberies, and Sunnyvale was able to disrupt at least one of those. So I think the announcers aren't being very credible and not giving ample credit to the potential safety benefits, particularly the license plate flagging of stolen cars has almost zero privacy impacts. And the big problem here is data retention and the time of data retention and the span of the agencies that are allowed to access the data. So I would really like to caution folks of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. This technology has proven safety benefits. And DPS will be presenting at length at Tuesday's meeting about the safety benefits. And I don't think these presenters have acknowledged at all the safety benefits. And I think that is that's not very fair and not very balanced presentation. Thank you very much.
I mean, if I may. Sure.
But they didn't order that I asked to call the meeting, and then I guess the space for questions that need to be asked.
Yeah, we can certainly do that, although it's not that unusual for our meetings to go over a little bit, but and I'm not sure, are there any more questions? I mean, we could probably take one or two more questions, but I think we've covered all the questions. So if there aren't any more questions, I think we can adjourn the meeting. I want to thank Austin and Melissa for coming and this, and I think we'll have an interesting council meeting on Tuesday, and so I'm looking forward to that. And now I think we have a much better understanding of what the issues are. So thank you very much. I'll adjourn the meeting again. Next meeting in May is May 16th. We'll have some topic, but we also have our executive board elections. So thank you, everyone.